Keisha Bryant had just finished a long meeting with the city council. She was a 37-year-old black woman, wearing a well-tailored navy blue suit that matched her unwavering confidence. Stay with us to see what unfolds next. Her dark curls were pinned neatly, and her steps carried the calm grace of someone who had earned their seat at the table. Her heels clicked softly on the sidewalk as she made her way back to her car parked at the edge of the street. Keisha wasn't a stranger to the weight of being a black woman in a predominantly white profession. As the head of internal affairs, her job was to ensure accountability within the police department, a responsibility she had worked tirelessly to earn and protect. She'd just finished a productive session discussing police reform with the council. Despite her success, she carried the invisible burden of always needing to prove herself. She had a loving husband, James Bryant, a quiet but strong man who worked as a district attorney. James and Keisha were both well-accomplished professionals, but they had always had to push through a system that wasn't designed for people like them. They were a power couple in their city, a force for change, but the weight of their success didn't erase the everyday microaggressions they faced. As Keisha approached her car, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly. A text from James, "How's your meeting, babe? Let's have dinner together tonight." She smiled, her heart warming at the thought of her supportive partner. But just as she was about to unlock her car door, a harsh voice cut through the air. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Keisha froze, the familiar edge in the voice sending a wave of discomfort through her. She turned toward the voice, knowing exactly what was coming. Standing a few feet away, glaring at her, was Officer Amanda Porter, a 30-year-old white female cop with short, spiky blonde hair and a hardened expression. Amanda had always been one of those cops who seemed to enjoy asserting her dominance, especially when she thought no one was looking. She had a reputation in the department for being abrasive, but in Keisha's circles, she was known for something much worse: a history of racist tendencies that had been overlooked time and time again. Keisha didn't know what had set Amanda off today, but she didn't need to guess. The harassment felt familiar. Amanda's tone was condescending, as if Keisha were somehow out of place in the neighborhood. She'd probably made an assumption based on her blackness. Keisha straightened her posture and turned to face her, refusing to let Amanda see any sign of intimidation. "Excuse me, officer. Is there a problem?" Amanda stepped closer, her hands resting on her hips, a smug look on her face. "Well, look at you. What are you doing around here? You don't belong in this part of town." Keisha's chest tightened. It was a question she had heard too many times, not just from cops but from regular people. "I'm just heading to my car, officer. Is that a crime?" Amanda ignored her question, stepping even closer. "You're in my territory now, sweetheart. People like you don't usually get this close to the city's downtown." Keisha's blood started to boil. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to make her feel small, but today she wouldn't let it slide. She was tired of letting the hate slide. Keisha stood tall, forcing herself to take a deep breath and not let her emotions rule her actions. She had dealt with much worse in her position, but there was something about Amanda's blatant disregard for her humanity that triggered a fire inside of her. "You really want to continue with this?" Keisha asked, her voice low but firm. "I'm not going to be intimidated by you or anyone else." Amanda scoffed, the arrogance oozing from her. "I don't care who you think you are, lady. I see people like you in this neighborhood all the time. You don't belong here." Her words were cold, dismissive, and dripping with contempt. The frustration in Keisha's chest began to build. She didn't need to explain herself, not to someone like Amanda. But her eyes narrowed, and a chill ran down her spine as she recognized that looked the same look she had seen in her years of investigating complaints against corrupt officers. It wasn't just hate, it was an attempt to push her, to make her feel less than. Keisha could feel the crowd gathering nearby, sensing that something wasn't right. Amanda, however, seemed completely unaware of the gravity of her actions. "Listen, you don't know who I am," Keisha said, her voice barely above a whisper, but with enough authority to stop Amanda in her tracks. Amanda raised an eyebrow, clearly uninterested, "Oh, really? Who are you then?" Keisha's heart was pounding now. She reached into her bag, pulling out her ID, and held it up for Amanda to see. "I'm Keisha Bryant, head of internal affairs. I'm the one who deals with officers like you." Amanda's smirk faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "So what? You think I'm scared of you? You're just a woman with a title. Titles don't mean anything in my world." Keisha's eyes didn't leave Amanda's, and she could feel the weight of her words settling in the air between them. "That may be true in your world, but not in mine. You've been reported more times than I can count for your behavior, Officer Porter. You think this is just a bad day for me? No, this is the moment where you'll finally be held accountable." Amanda's face was drained of color. She looked at Keisha, then at the crowd that was beginning to gather around them. Keisha could see the realization dawning on her face. She had underestimated the woman standing in front of her. Keisha stood her ground, feeling the weight of her position of the years spent fighting for justice, for accountability, and for Black people in the community. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing Amanda and the world that this kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. Amanda opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Her bravado had vanished. "Now, I suggest you walk away before things get worse for you," Keisha said, her voice calm, but carrying the force of a storm. Amanda hesitated, her pride battling with the reality that she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Keisha's heart raced as she watched her take a step back. The crowd had shifted, their murmurs filling the space between them. But Keisha wasn't finished yet. "You don't just get to treat people however you want, Amanda. Not anymore." Amanda turned, muttering something under her breath, and stormed off, disappearing into the street. Keisha stood there for a moment, her heart still pounding in her chest. But as the crowd began to disperse, one thing was clear: she had made her stand. And it wasn't just about one cop. It was about the entire system that needed to be held accountable. As Keisha got into her car, her phone buzzed again. It was James. "Dinner at 7? I miss you." Keisha smiled softly, wiping a tear from her eye. Today was a victory, but tomorrow, the real fight will begin. Keisha stared at her phone for a moment, the words from James bringing a brief sense of comfort. "Dinner at 7? I miss you." It was easy to lose herself in her work sometimes, to let the weight of her position and the endless battles she fought consume her. But James was always there, grounding her, reminding her that life wasn't just about the next investigation, the next fight for justice. It was about moments like this, moments of love and normalcy. Her hand shook slightly as she set the phone down in her lap and started the car. Her thoughts were still reeling from the encounter with Officer Amanda Porter. She had made a stand today, but the truth was it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. The real battle was just beginning. Keisha drove back to their apartment in silence, the sounds of the city blending into a hum that matched the tension still simmering beneath her skin. She pulled into their parking garage, the familiar sight of James's black SUV parked beside hers offering her a fleeting sense of comfort. When she stepped out of the car, she took a deep breath, trying to shake off the tightness in her chest. As she walked up the stairs to their apartment, the weight of her position and the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind didn't let up. She dealt with corruption, bias, and the constant underestimation of women like her for years. But today, it had hit differently. Officer Porter's arrogance had been the last straw. The fact that she'd been in a position of power, mocking Keisha as though she didn't belong, was something she couldn't let slide. She had been humiliated and dismissed simply because of who she was. Keisha opened the door to their apartment, the familiar smell of James's cooking filling the air. There he was, standing in the kitchen, a glass of wine in his hand, his face lighting up the moment he saw her. His warm smile did what nothing else could. It made the tension in her shoulders melt away. "Hey, babe," he said, walking over to her and kissing her on the cheek. "How was your day? You look like you've been through a storm." Keisha sighed, slipping off her shoes and rubbing her temples. "You could say that. I ran into Officer Porter today. James's face immediately darkened. That racist cop. Keisha nodded, her frustration bubbling up again. Yeah, she harassed me on the street, tried to make me feel like I didn't belong in that neighborhood. You know, the usual. But this time I didn't just walk away. I told her who I told her I was head of internal affairs. She paused, taking a deep breath. She didn't know who she was dealing with. James's eyes softened and he pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you, Keisha. You didn't let her win today. But I know this isn't over. You can't just walk away from someone like that. I know, Keisha said softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. But the thing is, I've been thinking about it all afternoon. What if this is bigger than just her? What if the system is built on people like her? People who think they can get away with treating us like we don't matter. James held her tighter, his voice steady. Then we take it down together. You don't have to fight this alone. Keisha pulled away slightly, looking up at him. I'm not afraid of a fight. But this isn't just about one officer. It's about the entire department. The corruption, the bias, all of it. James nodded. You've been working so hard to change things from the inside. But sometimes, change takes more than just paperwork and meetings. It takes a stand. Keisha smiled faintly. I know. And I took that stand today. But it's going to be harder than I thought. I have no doubt that Amanda's going to fight back, and she'll probably bring others with her. The system isn't just going to let me walk in and start making changes. Then we'll do it together, James said, his tone unshakable. You're not alone in this. You're not the only one fighting for change. We've got a whole community behind us. You've earned that. Keisha smiled, her heart swelling with love and pride. She had always known that James was her rock, but hearing his words now, with everything she was facing, gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Together they would fight this battle. After a quiet dinner, Keisha and James sat down at the kitchen table. Keisha took out her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. I've got to report this, she said, her voice steady. I can't let Amanda think she can get away with this, not after what she said to me. But I need to think about how to handle it. I don't want to make it seem like a personal attack. I want to show that this isn't just about her, it's about accountability. James leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. You've got this, Keisha. I know you'll handle it with the grace and strength you always do. But just don't go in too hard right away. There are people out there who'll try to make it look like you're the problem. So take it slow. Build the case. Keisha nodded, taking in his advice. You're right. I'll take it slow, but I won't back down. As the night wore on, Keisha found herself growing more and more determined. She wasn't just going to let this slip through the cracks like every other instance of injustice. This time she promised herself, I'll make them listen. The following morning, Keisha returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose. She walked into her office, her colleagues offering her nods of acknowledgement. She knew her work ahead would be difficult, but today she wasn't just a woman in a suit. She was a force to be reckoned with. At 10 a.m. her phone buzzed. The text was from an unknown number. I don't think you've won, Keisha. This isn't over. You have no idea who you're messing with. Keisha's heart skipped a beat. The threat was chilling, but it didn't faze her. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the moment when the stakes became real. As she looked out of her office window, her mind raced. The battle was far from over, but she was ready. And this time it wasn't just about her. It was about the community that had always had her back, the voices of those who had been silenced for too long. She took a deep breath, typing her response. I'm just getting started. Keisha's hands hovered over her keyboard as she read the text again, her mind racing. The words from the unknown number were clear. Don't think you've won, Keisha. This isn't over. You have no idea who you're messing with. The air in her office suddenly felt thick, heavy with an unseen pressure. For a moment, Keisha could almost hear the beating of her own heart, fast and erratic in her chest. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but the message unsettled her. It was one thing to fight a system that had been stacked against her for years, But now she was facing something more sinister, an invisible force that seemed to reach deeper than just Amanda Porter. Keisha had faced threats before in her career. It came with the territory, especially in her line of work. But this felt different. There was something personal about it, a calculated anger that hinted at a network of people who would stop at nothing to protect their own. She stared at her phone for a long moment, weighing her options. Keisha? Her colleague Tanya poked her head through the door, snapping Keisha out of her thoughts. You good? Keisha looked up, forcing a smile. Yeah, just thinking. Tanya raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing that something was off. You sure? You've been quieter than usual. Keisha leaned back in her chair, trying to push the feeling of unease away. I'm fine. Just a lot on my plate with the investigation. You know how it is. Tanya nodded but lingered by the door. If you need someone to talk to, you know I'm here, right? Keisha gave her a grateful nod. Tanya had always been a solid friend, someone she could rely on for support, but today Keisha wasn't sure how much she could lean on anyone. This was her fight to win, and she had to face it head-on, alone if necessary. The truth was, Keisha was scared. She didn't want to admit it, but the pressure was beginning to weigh on her. She had always prided herself on being strong, composed. But deep down, she knew that fighting this battle wasn't just about her career. It was about her safety, her life, and the lives of others who had been silenced for far too long. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time for her meeting with the chief of police, a man who had always respected her work, but who had remained distant in the face of the department's flaws. She wasn't sure what to expect today, but she knew one thing for certain. Her confrontation with Officer Porter was just the beginning, and the ripple effect would be felt across the entire department. Keisha entered the chief's office, the door clicking shut behind her. Chief Danvers was sitting at his desk, papers spread out in front of him. The middle-aged man looked up, his sharp blue eyes meeting hers with a mixture of curiosity and caution. He was a veteran of the force, someone who had seen it all and survived. But Keisha knew that his loyalty to the department had always been tempered by a quiet sense of fairness. If anyone could understand what she was up against, it was him. Keisha, good to see you, he said, his voice gruff but warm. Take a seat. She nodded, sitting down across from him. Chief, I'm not here for pleasantries. Danvers studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. I figured. So what's going on? The Porter situation. Keisha took a deep breath, her fingers clenched around the edge of the chair. Yes. Officer Porter harassed me yesterday out in public. I told her who I was, and I reported it. But the thing is, Chief, this isn't just about her. I've been doing some digging, and this goes deeper. Much deeper. Danvers didn't say anything right away. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together as he studied her. You know how sensitive this is, Keisha. People like Porter don't just get away with this behavior without consequences, but we also don't want to stir up more trouble than necessary. Keisha met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. I'm not asking for a cover-up, Chief. I'm asking for accountability. I'm asking for you to stand by me to help me expose what's really happening within this department, because I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface. The chief shifted in his seat, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. I've been hearing things, rumors, whispers, but you know I can't just go off of hearsay. I need proof, and we both know how hard it is to get good intel from within the department. Keisha nodded. I know, but I'm willing to risk it. This isn't just about Porter. This is about a system that's been broken for a long time, and if we don't fix it, it's just going to get worse. There was a long silence between them, the weight of her words settling in the room. Finally, the chief sighed, pushing his chair back slightly. You've got guts, Keisha. I can't deny that. But you need to be careful. You've got enemies, and not just on the street. There are people in this department who won't hesitate to take you down if it means protecting their own. Keisha didn't flinch. She had heard these warnings before from others who were too afraid to stand up. But she was different. She couldn't back down now, not when so many people were counting on her. "I'll take whatever precautions I need," she said firmly. "But I'm not backing down. We start cleaning this up now or we're just letting it fester." Danvers nodded slowly. "All right, I'll help where I can, but you're on your own when it comes to the heavy lifting. Just be prepared for what's coming next. This won't be easy." Keisha stood up, her heart still pounding in her chest, but she felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone in this fight. As she left the chief's office, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't an unknown number. It was a name she recognized, Officer Amanda Porter. Keisha hesitated before opening the message, her stomach churning. It read, "Keep digging, Keisha. You'll regret it. There's more to lose than you think." Keisha stared at the screen for a long time, her mind racing. It was clear that someone with power was watching her every move. But this time, it wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. Her hands shook slightly, but her resolve only grew stronger. They were scared. And when people in power got scared, that meant they were losing control. Keisha Bryant wasn't going to back down. She was ready for whatever came next. Keisha's hand shook slightly as she set the phone down, the chilling text from Amanda Porter lingering in her mind. Her gut told her that things were escalating faster than she had anticipated. But for the first time in days, Keisha felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about standing up for herself anymore, it was about making sure no one else had to face what she had. No one else deserved to be harassed or dismissed because of who they were, not on her watch. She wasn't just fighting a corrupt officer, she was fighting for the countless people who had been silenced by the system, the ones who felt like their voices didn't matter. This was bigger than her job. It was about justice for every person who had been treated unfairly, who had been crushed under the weight of prejudice and bias. Over the next few weeks, Keisha worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, meeting with allies who believed in her cause, and building a case that could not be ignored. She used her position at Internal Affairs to shine a light on the systemic corruption that had allowed officers like Amanda Porter to operate unchecked. It wasn't easy. Every step felt like a battle one she was determined to win. The pressure mounted. Keisha received more cryptic messages. Her colleagues at the department started to distance themselves, some out of fear, others because they didn't want to get involved. The weight of it all, the isolation, began to take its toll. But every time she felt like giving up, she remembered the faces of the people she was fighting for, the people who had been victims of injustice, the ones who didn't have a voice, the ones who needed someone to speak for them. She knew what she was doing was dangerous, but she also knew it was necessary. The day of the final meeting came, the one that would decide the fate of Officer Porter and the corrupt system that had enabled her. Keisha walked into the room with a steely determination, her head held high. She had prepared for this moment for weeks. The presentation was clear, the evidence overwhelming, and in the end, the truth could not be ignored. The fallout was swift. Media outlets picked up the story, and soon the entire city was talking about the investigation. Keisha's name spread across news outlets, social media, and water cooler conversations alike. What had started as a simple act of standing up to one officer had turned into a movement for justice, one that inspired others to speak up, to demand accountability, and to take control of their own narratives. The department, under the pressure of public opinion, was forced to make reforms. Keisha's work was just beginning, but the first real change had been made. She had taken on the system and won. It was a victory not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been wronged by the people who were supposed to protect them. But Keisha didn't stop there. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long road toward true accountability. There was still work to be done, and she was committed to it. Keisha's journey wasn't an easy one. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But through it all, she learned one important lesson. Change starts with one person who refuses to be silenced. The true power lies in standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. It's about using your voice, your position, and your strength to make a difference even when the odds seem insurmountable. Keisha wasn't alone in her fight. She had the support of people who believed in her, who shared her vision for a better, more just world. And that's the key. No one can change the world on their own. It takes a collective effort. It takes the voices of the community, the power of unity, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. This story isn't just about Keisha Bryant. It's about all of us. It's about the everyday people who stand up against injustice, who face adversity head-on, and fight for what's right. It's about using our collective power to hold systems accountable, to ensure that no one else suffers in silence. If Keisha's journey has inspired you, if it has sparked something in your heart, then I encourage you to take action. Click that subscribe button to stay updated on more powerful stories like this, stories that challenge the status quo and inspire change. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Talk about it in the comments. Let's start a conversation about the importance of accountability, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. Your voice matters, and together we can continue the fight for justice.